Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into a topic that's, well, it's all around us, but it can be a little tricky to understand. And that's the relationship between religion and politics. It's a really big part of your Class 10 Civics syllabus, so we're going to break it down together, nice and easy, step by step. Now, I'm sure you've heard people say this, right? That religion and politics just shouldn't mix. It's a really common idea. But is the reality that simple? Should they, or even can they, be kept completely separate? That's the big question we're going to explore in our explainer today. So, here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the complex relationship between religion and public life. Then, we'll see how religion can actually be a force for good in politics, kind of like a moral compass. We'll also check out how politics can be used to bring social justice within religious communities. But it's not always positive, so we'll also talk about the dangers when religion is used to divide people. And finally, we'll see how India's secular framework tries to handle this whole situation. All right, let's get started with our first section, the complex relationship. Unlike gender divisions, which we've talked about before, religious differences, well, they are very often expressed right out in the open, in the world of politics. Let's see how that happens. Think about it. For so many people, religion is a huge part of who they are. It shapes their values, their beliefs, their whole sense of community. So it's actually quite natural for them to want to express their needs and their interests as members of a religious community in public life. And that, of course, includes politics. Okay, so now let's flip the coin and look at the other side. You see, it's not always a bad thing when religion and politics interact. In fact, sometimes religion can be a really powerful force for good in the political world. Take a look at this famous quote from Mahatma Gandhi. "Religion can never be separated from politics." That's a bit surprising, isn't it? What do you think he really meant by that? Now, this is really interesting. Gandhiji wasn't talking about any one particular religion, like Hinduism or Islam or Christianity. For him, religion meant the moral values and the ethics that are common to all religions. Things like truth, nonviolence, compassion, equality. He believed that politics must be guided by these basic human ethics. And this is where we see the positive side in action. For example, when human rights groups fight to protect religious minorities, they're working from a moral foundation. Or when women's movements demand fair family laws for everyone, they're fighting for justice and equality. These are perfect examples of religion being a force for good in politics. Now, let's look at this relationship from the opposite direction. Sometimes it's the state or the government that has to step into religious matters. Why? To make sure everyone gets social justice and equality. To understand this, we need to be clear on what family laws are. And pay attention, because this is an important term for your exams. Family laws are basically the rules that deal with personal things like marriage, divorce, adoption, and inheritance. In a country like India, different religious communities often have their own separate family laws.
Now, here's the problem. It turned out that many of these traditional family laws were actually quite unfair, especially to women. So women's movements started to speak up, demanding that the government step in and change these laws to make them more equal for everyone. This is a classic case of why politics sometimes has to get involved to fix injustices rooted in certain religious practices.
So, here's the main takeaway, the most crucial point. Bringing religion into politics isn't automatically a problem. The real test is equality. As long as political actions treat every single religion equally, and the goal is to stop discrimination and oppression, then they're not wrong. It's all about fairness. But of course, there is a very dangerous side to all of this. The problem really starts when religion is used not for moral guidance, but to divide people. And this is where we need to introduce a new, very important concept, communalism. This slide shows the difference so clearly. On the one hand, you have a constructive, healthy expression of religion in politics, which is based on shared moral values. On the other hand, you have the dangerous expression, communalism, which says religion is the only basis of a nation. One fights for equality, the other pits one group against another, usually by claiming that one religion is superior to all others. All right, let's get this definition down perfectly for your exams. Communalism is the belief that religion is the main basis of a social community. It's this dangerous idea that all followers of one religion have the exact same interests, and that these interests are automatically in conflict with people of other faiths. This belief is really the root of the problem. And communalism can show itself in some very ugly ways. It can start with something that seems small, like everyday prejudice and stereotypes. But it can quickly grow into something much worse, like demanding political dominance for one group or using religious symbols just to get votes. And in the most extreme cases, it can lead to terrible violence, riots, and massacres. So, how does a country as diverse as India deal with such a huge challenge? Well, our constitution gives us a powerful answer. Let's take a look at India's secular framework, which is designed to be our constitutional safeguard. You see, the brilliant people who wrote our constitution, they knew all about the dangers of communalism. And that is precisely why they chose the model of a secular state for India. This idea is one of the very foundations of our country. So what does being a secular state actually mean for us? Well, in India, it means four key things. First, our country has no official religion. Second, every single person is free to believe, practice, and share their religion, or to have no religion at all. Third, the Constitution strictly forbids discrimination based on religion. And fourth, the state can step into religious matters to ensure equality for everyone, like when it banned the terrible practice of untouchability. These four pillars are what make India a secular democracy. So our constitution gives us a really strong secular foundation. But the challenge of communalism is still very real. And that leads us to the question we will tackle in our next explainer. How does this reality of communalism on the ground challenge the very idea of a secular India? We'll explore that next time. Thank you for joining me.